Hello everybody, my name is KingStix and welcome back to another AMA. Let's just jump right into it. Question number 1 comes from Heyday 15. What do you do as a Warwick if you solo invade, but it is warded so the enemy top and mid rotate to kill you? The best way to avoid them collapsing on you is to go in at the right time. For example, the red buff or the blue buff, whichever one you are invading, spawns in at exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds. So make sure that you get to it at 1 minute 30 seconds and you don't get there sooner, because if you run up into the bush or if you run up there way too early, they could see you. They might walk in the bush just to keep watch, and a lot of times they know you're there that way. But if you get there at exactly 1:30, typically the enemy top laner is already top, and even if they have it warded, they don't want to walk over there, and if they do, you and your top laner can mess them up. That's typically the easiest way to deal with it. What I've currently started doing is I actually bring my top laner with me. I say, hey, follow me, but I don't need a leash. So we go into the bush together, and if the enemy top laner is waiting, watching, keeping watch, whatever, we fuck him up and we send him home. We typically get about at least half his health, and if he's away from his keyboard or doesn't react very quickly, we sometimes do get a kill. About 1 out of 3 times we get the kill, and at that point you can still take the buff and get away with it. If everyone does collapse on you while you're doing it, if you can get the red buff and then level up your E level 2, as long as your top laner or mid laner help you, you can typically win a 2v3. On rare occasion, when it is warded and it's clear that they're guarding it and you're not going to be able to get it, you have to just run back to your own buff and solo it. It's not the end of the world. You can still win the game with proper pathing and ganking. Aksucky asks, you are smiling when you say, I catch you guys next time, aren't you? Yes, I am. Edib asks, what do you ban when playing Twitch jungle? I typically try to ban Kha'Zix or Kayn. I typically go for the Kha'Zix ban though, because there's not a whole lot of counterplay. If he gets a kill on you in the early game and he keeps counter jungling you, there's not much you can do. Zekatsu asks, my biggest problem is when I tilt. Whenever I approach the highest rank I've ever achieved, silver 292 LP, I go on tilt for whatever stupid reason. I drop quite a few divisions and then I eventually climb back up. How do I stop this curse? How do I prevent tilt? The best way to prevent it is to practice plenty in normals and to get your skill level up. Whenever you are playing towards the end of your skill, it's very easy to tilt, because as your teammates feed or if you fall behind, you have very little control over the game and you feel that. You internalize it and you start lashing out. So the best thing for you to do is to practice in normals or get another account to smurf on, increase your skill level, get better. So let's say you get your true skill up to, like, let's say gold 3, then you can get all the way up to gold 3 and then do the same thing over again. Akash asks, is Nunu viable in higher elo? I'm now at 80% win rate with him in low elo. Nunu is an interesting pick. He's definitely great in high elo because of his objective securing, and he's good at peeling. In lower elo, it can be wishy-washy if you are good at Nunu, and if you just naturally synergize well with his kit as a player with your mentality, I would say play him in lower elo. If you're not necessarily a passive jungler who likes objectives, I wouldn't recommend Nunu in lower elo. But yes, if you are making him work, keep playing him, man. 80% win rate is pretty good. Tom Say 1010 asks, what is the best build and evolves for Kha'Zix right now? How to climb with him in lower elo, how to end the games fast with him. Kha'Zix Q is really strong. It's been buffed, it's been nerfed, and it's been buffed. So if you are doing a great job at getting ahead, safest first evolution you can do at level 6 would be to evolve your Q, give it some extra damage, and make it very spicy. If you're doing a great job at counter jungling, and if you are really far ahead, you should probably go for your ultimate evolution. That way you can keep counter jungling the enemy jungler. If you're not good at counter jungling or you haven't been counter jungling, I wouldn't recommend evolving your ultimate. Kha'Zix typically just goes for lethality. He gets his warrior and rushes lethality items like Duskblade. A lot of times you'll see a Kha'Zix just get his hunter's machete and run straight forward Duskblade. That's not that uncommon, and he just shreds people. The only health item a Kha'Zix will get typically is maybe a Black Cleaver. He doesn't always get Black Cleaver, but typically for his 4th, 5th, or 6th item, he'll have a Black Cleaver or a Guardian Angel. He typically has one of the two at some point in his build. Otherwise, he's just a little bit too squishy. And on Kha'Zix, you should be aiming to end your games before the 35-minute mark. If the game goes past 40 minutes and if the enemy team has a front line, you're going to really be struggling. If you want to know how to end your games on Kha'Zix, the best thing you can do is learn the matchups. If you're going up against an easy enemy jungler, someone like maybe a Twitch, a Kesa, or an off-meta jungler like Wukong, you need to be counter invading them and teaching them a lesson. Get your buff, get your wolves, get your other buff, and invade them. You can really 1v1 any off-meta or any weak jungler in the early game. And if you see any free ganks where the enemies are in the middle of the lane or pushed up, just come in behind them, save your dash until they flash away, and kill them. It's very simple. After you get the kill, it's important that you push the lane and try to take turret. Getting first turret on Kha'Zix is important to snowball. Whenever you get a kill, try to take an objective off of it. Don't just go back in your jungle and farm. If there's not an objective to take after you get a kill, try to take the enemy's jungle if you can. Troll asks, how exactly does crit work and does it negate armor? Simply put, a critical strike is a basic attack or ability that deals twice its normal damage. This can be enhanced by critical strike modifiers like Infinity Edge. All basic attacks from any champion can critically strike, assuming they have some form of crit in their build. Very few abilities can actually critically strike, it's very rare. It's not possible to critically strike structures with the exception of Jhin. Jhin is the only champion in the game that can critically strike structures, and they only did that because his tower taking was really shit because he's got slow attack speed. To make up for that, they let him be able to crit turrets with his 4th shot. Most champions have specific attack animations for critical strikes. You can see this. Some champions, it's like blatantly differently, like they'll swing their weapon way differently or shoot it differently. Critical strikes do not negate armor. For example, let's say you have 100 attack damage and you land a crit, then that would be 200 damage, 200 attack damage to be specific. Assuming that person takes 20% reduced physical damage because of their base armor, then your 200 AD just turned into 160 because their 20% armor reduction pulled away from your total crit amount, which was 200. Like the Pro asks, what are the spawn times for jungle camps and when do they spawn for the second time? Raptors spawning at 1 minute 27, Wolves spawn at 127, Krug spawn in at 142, and Gromp spawns in at 142. The reason why Krugs and Gromp have a later spawn-in rate than Raptors and Wolves is because laners would take advantage of taking that camp to get an XP advantage and then go into lane, and Riot didn't like the way that worked because it was kind of lucky, because then you'd get that early rush, get level 2, and then bully the laners. They didn't feel like it was very healthy, so they made it much longer, so you can't really do that anymore, or at least not very effectively. Blue spawns in at 130, and red spawns in at 130. The reason why blue and red buff have a slightly longer respawn rate than Raptor and Wolves is because junglers who start on Raptors, maybe something like a Mundo or a Kayn, this helps them out quite a bit because they can start on their camp 3 seconds, then a jungler who gets a leash on their main buff can't, since their buff spawns in 3 seconds later. Red buff and blue buff have a 5-minute respawn, so if you kill it at the 2-minute mark, it'll be in at the 7-minute mark. Very simple. And then Gromp, Krugs, Wolves, and Raptors take 2 minutes and 30 seconds to respawn back in. Ice Tag asks, when will you do a face reveal? I'll most likely do a face reveal at 50,000 subscribers or 100k. Manuel asks, how can you come back with Twitch jungle game if your level 2 gank doesn't work or you die in the early game / get counter jungled? The best thing you can do at level 2 is do a gank that's towards your next buff. For example, if you start on red buff at the top side of the map, I usually like to gank the mid laner and then cross directly over into my blue buff. That way I don't have to risk the enemy jungler stealing my blue buff before I can get there or mess around with that. I also get off a lot of gank pressure. I can potentially get a kill mid. Even if I don't though, I got off a lot of damage, pressure, and I'm on my way to my buff. If you do fall behind in the early game, you get killed, you lose your buffs, it's difficult to come back. Just stay focused and attack the weakest enemy laner over and over and you can come back. Noise asks, how do you gank a high mobility laners with low mobility junglers? Low mobility junglers are brutal to gank with. You have to be very patient. Let's say you want to gank a LeBlanc with an Olaf. You know that whenever her jump is up, that you can't gank her because right when you run out, she's going to jump away. Nothing you can do. The best thing you can try to do is get behind her. So take a route that ends up coming behind her. That's a good start. And then wait until she eases in on your teammate. So get your teammate to bait it or just wait maybe 10 to 15 seconds if you're willing to. Once she uses her E, you go in and then she'll have no way to get away unless her flash is up. Typically with low mobility junglers, they tend to be power clears until level 6. XD asks, on Jax, when do I go warrior over Cinderhulk? Jax doesn't usually build warrior. There's only 2 jungle items Jax builds, which is Cinderhulk or Bloodrazor. If you're going hyper carry Jax and you have at least 1 tank on your team, you go Bloodrazor. And if you don't have a true tank on your team, or if you're in higher elo, you need to go Cinderhulk. Zia Gill asks, what do you think about Black Cleaver on Warwick? I really wish that Warwick's passive, Q, and ultimate did physical damage. That would make Black Cleaver really strong on him because of the cooldown reduction in damage. The issue is currently it's not viable because the armor shred on it means nothing since Warwick's passive, Q, and ulti all do pure magic damage. Chat asks, when I'm playing Twitch jungle, the enemy jungler normally always invades. What do I do since Twitch can't really 1v1 well early? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. If you're referring to level 1, you and your top laner and mid laner are supposed to be defending your red buff. If 3 or more enemies come, you have to run. If only 1 or 2 come, you should be able to kill them. And to avoid getting killed in your jungle in the other levels, try to keep track of where the enemy jungler is. Try to get to your buffs on time if that is an issue. General buff management. Glimpse asks, in your opinion, what are the god tier junglers this patch? In my humble opinion, the best junglers in this patch, starting from the best, At number 1 to the number 5 would be Kha'Zix, Jax, Evelynn, Shaco, and then Warwick. Buff Dude asks, after I get a kill or two early, is Twitch jungle? A friend of mine suggested that I just camp the enemy jungler. I feel as if without red/ulti, I don't really want to duel people. What do you typically do when you have a lead but don't have ulti/red buff? It depends on who the enemy jungler is. If the enemy jungler is someone who you can easily kill, let's say they fall behind, maybe it's a tank jungler, someone like a Maokai or Sejuani. If you do get really far ahead of them, you can stay in their jungler and keep hurting them. Typically on Twitch jungle, it's best to camp enemy laners and avoid enemy junglers, because most enemy junglers can 1v1 Twitch even if they are behind. And if you are going to 1v1 somebody on Twitch, make sure your challenging smite is up, that way you take reduced damage. Lewis DLR asks, what do you consider low and high elo? If you go off of player population, low elo is basically bronze and silver. Gold and up would be high elo, but typically whenever someone refers to high elo or myself, it's typically an elo that's lower than you or you feel you're considerably better than. A Diamond 1 player would probably consider lower plat and elos lower than plat to be low elo, when in fact technically it's not. And a high challenger player might even consider a master tier player who doesn't have that much LP low elo. So basically it's anyone who's lower elo than you, but technically it's basically just silver and bronze. Asian Boy asks, how do you feel about Conqueror on Warwick or Press the Attack? Is it better? Conqueror on Warwick might be viable as a top laner or a support. As a jungler, it's not, because you have to be in combat for 4 seconds. As a jungler on Warwick, you're running in behind them, attacking them. You don't have 4 seconds for that to get activated before you can get your use out of it. You're going in, you're only attacking them for so long, which is why Press the Attack is by far better on Warwick jungle. As a top laner though, you might be able to make it work. Kemikar123 asks, what kind of champions do I need to have in my champ pool? I'm a top lane. If you are a top lane player, you need 3 kinds of top laners. 1, you need a tank. That's very important. Typically the top laner is the only person who's the tank on the team, especially in lower elos. So make sure you have an Ornn, a Maokai, or something like a Sion. You need something tanky. Number 2, you need a hyper carry. If your jungler's a tank and your support's a tank, you're going to need some damage. So I would recommend something like Fiora, Riven, or Darius. And number 3, you need an AP champion. If no one on your team is AP, it'd be nice if you had AP champions. For example, if you need a tank and it's AP, play Maokai. If you need hyper damage AP, go Rumble or Ryze. And if you don't have all 3 of those, if your team needs a tank and you don't play tank, I would suggest dodging. Or if your team needs an AP top laner and if you don't play any, I would suggest dodging. Slimer213 asks, is Echo viable in jungle? Echo jungle is viable, but it's very tricky to play. It's kind of like Twitch jungle. In the right hands, it's really effective, but if you don't know what you're doing, we have a question from Lethal Spectre, and it is a long one, so I'm going to summarize. Basically, he's telling me about a build he runs on Twitch top lane and mid lane. He says that it's generally better as a top laner, that way he can gank his mid lane. And what he does is he cheeses the top laner with his Q level 1 to get off some poke damage. He starts Doran's Blade health potion, and he's just going over the general items. What I would suggest, if you're going to be playing Twitch top lane or mid lane, don't pick him unless you have at least 1 tank and 1 pill on your team. So if you have a tank jungler and a pill support or vice versa, then it could be okay if you're really good at Twitch. If your top laner has low wave clear, they can't clear the waves very quickly, you should build something like a Yomu's or a Duskblade first item. That way you can roam and get kills easier. If your top laner does have wave clear and they're beefy, definitely rush a Bork in my opinion. So if your enemy top laners like Gangplank or Darius, you getting a Bork would be very nice. Plasma King Snake asks, do you follow the same rules for dodging in a promotional series? Yes, I do, especially if I care about my win rate. Do you think Rat IRL dodges promos if he's trying to get really high win rate? Yes, 100% he dodges promos. Prosos asks, how do you counter/play against Ka, Shaco, etc. as Twitch? It's difficult. Start red buff, gank your mid laner, and cross over to your blue buff. You need to get over there as fast as possible because you don't want them being level 3 and then rolling up on your blue buff because they're going to fuck you up. Act Sucky asks, is Conqueror good for jungle? And if so, which champions would it work best with? There's only one jungle champion that I've seen successfully pull off Conqueror, and that's Master Yi. Master Yi works really well with it because with his Rage Blade and his Q and ultimate, he can make good use of it. He can stay on top of you with his Q and ultimate and keep Conqueror up non-stop with the way it resets with melee champions. It's very nice because you can be attacking a turret, the enemy steps up and you rip them apart with your Conqueror, Rage Blade, and ulti. It's very good. Other than that though, there's not many junglers that can take advantage of it. It's mainly a top laner keystone because they're constantly in combat with the minions that they can activate Conquer on the enemy champion quite easily. Traku asks, what's your favorite food? My favorite food is definitely Indian food. It has loads of spices that us Americans aren't really accustomed to, so it's very flavorful and tasty. Also, many of the foods are naturally vegan, or at least lower on animal products, which is nice. So I can go to pretty much any Indian restaurant and get something that's vegan without them having to do anything special. I really like this question. I think it's important. Slimer213 asks, does playing PvE help me improve if I'm bronze silver level? The answer to your question is no. PvE will not help you improve under any circumstance unless you're in high diamond or up. Only way PvE could help you is if you're in very high elo and there's some big changes in the PvE and you want to get on top of it. Let's say a champion's getting an insane rework and you want to be like, I know this rework's OP and I want to get good at that shit. If you do that, then yes, it's very good if you're in the very high elos. However, if you are low elo, people make so many mistakes. Many people don't understand their champions, that it would be better for you to practice a champion in non-PvE environment. That way you can get good at it and beat people normally. Bugsplat asks, are there junglers that have strong level 1s and 2s? There is no jungler that necessarily has a strong level 1 unless you're referring to a 5v5 fight level 1. In that case, probably Mundo if he starts Cleaver. If you're referring to a gank at level 1, no jungler really ganks at level 1. There's no point, because if after you get your first buff, you're level 2 anyways. So any jungler who wants to gank at level 2 would take red buff and then gank. And most commonly, you're going to see junglers with strong level 2 ganks are ranged champions. Ezreal, Twitch, Kindred, Tristana are all great examples of jungle champions that have really strong level 2 ganks. Since they are ranged, they'll come up behind you and auto attack you non-stop. And there's a really good chance that they're going to get the kill if you don't immediately flash or if you're already pushed up. 99% of the time though, it's best to get level 3 and gank on most junglers. That way you have all 3 abilities, and typically the enemy laner will be level 2 when you are level 3 as the jungler. Big ol' nut ass, do you listen to music while playing? I find it helps me better and makes better decisions on how to use my time in game. I personally don't find music helpful. It distracts me and I can't focus on the game itself. I do listen to it outside of game. If music does help you, keep doing it. Whatever helps you to play the game better, you should keep doing it. I know a lot of people have different mental processes and music can help keep a rhythm to them. Like there's even some people who constantly shake, but like when they listen to classical music, it like stops them from shaking, which is pretty cool. I'm not saying that's what you have, but I mean, if music helps you play better and focus, then keep doing it. And that is going to wrap up this AMA. If you guys want to ask any questions that'll be featured in the next AMA, head over to the channel's Discord down in the description below. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out a lot. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.